joined back now with a very, very special guest. And I'm really excited for this one. I know the boys are too here, but you see on screen, if you're not watching on screen, you'll hear his beautiful voice. It's Mr. Stuart. And Stuart from England is a new fan of the Montreal Canadiens. And we decided to have him on because I don't know if you guys are on Twitter, but this is a great story. And I'm going to let you tell it. Stuart, first and foremost, welcome to the podcast. How are you today, sir?
I'm absolutely fine. Absolutely delighted to be here. Privileged to come on. So thank you very much for inviting me, and can't wait to get down to it. Really.
Yeah, pleasure's all ours. Let's start from the beginning here, Stuart. I'm just going to ask you straight up. It's not every day we've spoken about this. Just leading up into this episode and this segment specifically is that it's not every day that you have, what I'm going to call a very full-grown adult in front of us with a magnificent beard, coming into a new sport, learning it, and the best part is you select the best fan base and the best team to come into, which is the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, that's bias, but tell us a little bit about how it went down, start to finish. Like why hockey, why the Habs, and all of that good stuff.
I think I'd have to go back to probably 2004, which seems a long way away considering I've only come to the Habs probably in the last couple of months. And I think I remember watching the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in 2002. And I'd never seen the sport of ice hockey before. I was quite young at the time. And I thought this looks like a really good sport, really fast, really exciting. And I remember I saw the game NHL 2004 in a shop one day, and I thought I'll buy that. I think that was the one with Heatley on the front and his Thrashers
Yeah,
shirt. So
baby.
that
Yeah,
shows how long ago that one was. And I remember choosing the Canadians at the time in the game, plainly because I liked the jerseys. And I think there was guys like Zednik and Sure and Ribeiro, Brisebois playing for them at the time. And these guys were just names to me. They didn't mean anything else. There was nothing special about them to me. They were just names. And I remember really enjoying the game, but knew nothing about the Canadians, knew nothing about the league itself. And then I was about 18, 19 at the time, so the rest of life kind of got in the way. Became a teacher, dedicated a lot of myself and my time to that. And it was probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit before that. I remember watching a couple of videos on YouTube, going down one of those rabbit holes that you go down, and
yeah.
the sweater came up. And I watched the full video of the sweater, and I remember thinking to myself, I remember that team. I remember that team from that game I used to play on. And I was intrigued as to why it was narrated by this guy who was speaking with a French accent and all the rest of it. And I did a little bit of research, found out who the Canadians actually were, why they were so important to the community, and it just struck a chord to me. It resonated with me. It kind of had something to do with being part of a community and being rooted within that community and having a unique identity. And I've always rooted for the underdog throughout my life. Obviously, most people would identify with an underdog, I think. Um, but I think that when I actually looked up the history of the Canadians, I thought to myself, well, these guys aren't underdogs. You keep talking 24 Stanley Cups and this and the success they've had, the history they've had, things like that. But the essence of the team it is that spirit of us against the world sort of thing, and I like that, and I like that as a fan base. And um, I didn't really go on social media and talk to other people about it. It was very difficult to share. Obviously, we're friends and family here because the exposure that NHL gets in England is quite low, and it's very difficult, as I know now, to actually see the games at the time. Um, but I thought I'll take the plunge, and I'll actually go on social media, and I'll set up this account, and I'll start talking about the Canadians. And I think it was prompted more really by being a little bit disillusioned by the way football's going at the moment in the country. Um, it's all kind of it's seeped in money, and I know that obviously the NHL is worth a lot of money as well. But I think it's the culture of cap space as a leveler. We don't have anything like that in the Premier League. There is no leveler. You have teams who can spend £300 million in a season in the same league as a team that gets to spend 15 if they're lucky. And it means that you end up with the same three or four teams winning the league. year in, year out. There are a few anomalies along the way, like your Leicester Cities and Blackburn Rovers and things like that, but it doesn't happen very often. And I think another part of the allure, the draw to the NHL was actually everyone does get their opportunity eventually. They might not always take it, but the opportunity is always there. So NHL hockey, that was something that I definitely wanted to follow and invest my time in. And then combine that with, like I say, the respect that I have for the fan base of the Canadians and the story that they've got. It just seemed like a perfect time to do it. And I've been welcomed with open arms, and everything that I thought I knew about the community is actually even better than I thought it was, because people are very welcoming and we do kind of look after each other, and it's been wonderful, the reception that I've had so far.
It's absolutely beautifully said. You know, I kind of feel bad that when we usually swear on this podcast, but that was such a beautifully eloquent story that you just said. I was kind of mesmerized by it, and I'm gonna let maybe Alex talk here because out of all of us on the podcast, I think the when also I should mention maybe to the people. I think it's pretty obvious here when you're talking about football, we're talking about soccer. We
Yeah.
have to say it because that's the North American way. It should be called football. We know we're stupid, but Alex, I want to maybe just like have you kind of jump on here and maybe talk about the differences because I totally agree. That's one of the reasons why for hockey. I always felt, and this is a bias, obviously, I lived in Montreal my whole life. I grew up playing hockey, all of these things. So it's been deep rooted since the beginning. But the parity of the league is what draws me to this sport time and time again. So, Alex, maybe some comparisons. Maybe you guys could talk a little bit about, football, because I know that out of all of the things, you're going to be able to speak on that.
I mean, I just want to touch on the fact, like you said, it was very beautifully said. I feel kind of bad that like my backstory would just be like, oh, I was born here. I played hockey growing up, like go Montreal, right? I don't
Yeah.
have a nice backstory. But yeah, when it comes to football or soccer, my dad was actually born just outside Coventry,
Right. Yeah.
just a small town there. So when I went, I saw a football. I don't know if I should say football or soccer, but I'll say soccer. I apologize, but I'll say soccer. I saw a soccer game. It was Aston Villa in Birmingham against
Local
Arsenal,
derby.
and I'm an Arsenal fan now because that's the first team I saw play, and I wanted to support the good team. Aston Villa weren't great at that time, so I just picked Arsenal. But like you said, that spending problem in soccer currently, I could see why it bothers people. It is kind of depressing to see the same teams just get better and better. But I can also see the other side of that argument with hockey. I can see why some people get bored of it because it is so even. Like there are
Hmm.
much less of those underdog stories or going into a game. Like there's never a clear favorite really. So I could see why it's less exciting. Whereas in soccer, I find it fun to watch those games where there's that worst team who, if they pull off the upset, like it's something exciting for me. Now, obviously, I wasn't raised with football, soccer, so I could see why you get tired of that. But that's just my perspective of it as, I guess, not a newer soccer fan, but obviously less exposure to it than people in the UK. Um, Yeah, that's just the way I see it. Obviously, I'm a big hockey fan, but I've grown more attached to soccer recently because of those stories like Leicester and stuff, for
Hmm.
example. Whereas in hockey, it's, I guess, 15 teams can win every year. It's less exciting when something like that happens.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a case of those victories mean more. And I know what you
Mm.
mean. You've definitely hit the nail on the head, and I kind of never thought of it from that perspective before. But you are right. When you pull off a giant killing, or you beat one of your main rivals, or you've been on a terrible run and you manage to beat the bigger team, the
Mm.
team with the greater status, who you're expecting to beat you, and everyone else is expecting to roll over you. It does mean more. And I think I don't know. I don't know whether at times, if you're a fan of those bigger clubs like the Man Cities and the Man Uniteds, and I don't know whether that gets boring as a fan. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I've
can
never
see
been in that
that for
position
sure.
because the team I did
Yeah,
support was Newcastle, so we've never got bored of success really.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Like I could see both sides of it definitely. It's I guess it would, I don't know, would it get old? Like if Montreal was winning 10 years in a row, would I be disappointed? I don't know.
Honestly, I
I
think yes.
I think
Like
it,
I
it
want
would
to
you
say
think
yes.
so? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you would take things for
I don't know,
granted.
it's a tough one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like obviously speaking from the our perspective, like our parents watched the Habs become this crazy franchise that has won 24 cups, and in like the 70s they won 4 in a row, in the 50s they won 5 in a row. So they're kind of expecting the world from them, and they're kind of always disappointed from what they're seeing these days when they are more of an underdog these days. So yeah, it is good to I think have that balance of being a powerhouse team and being the kind of underdog. So it's everything in moderation. That's what I always say.
Of course.
So.
But the other thing too is that over time, Stuart, I don't know to what extent how extensive your research, or if there's anything that would even point to this, but Montreal is one of those markets that, because there is no incentive monetarily that we can put over and above, there's not really any real incentive to come here unless you love to be critiqued and want your life to be a living hell if you're losing. Like that's an actual problem in attracting free agents in this market, and it takes a special type of player, and one that the Montreal Canadiens fan base usually loves to death if you do choose Montreal. So there's another side to that, and it's pretty interesting, kind of the dynamics between the fact that there's a cap, and that the difference between you as a football or soccer fan sees. So that's really cool. And I want to come in because we forgot to shout out at the top of this segment, but we actually have another fan who is from the UK, Eddie with a Y on Twitter. I want to thank him and shout him out because, just to get into the next part of this segment, he has a couple of questions, and then we could get into some questions that you may have, Stuart. But first of all, I'm going to start with his question and his answer. So his first question was, sorry, actually, it's a pretty long one. So he's going to talk a little bit about his story. Eddie, thank you again. When I was attempting to choose an NHL team, one of the deciding factors was to think about which teams I didn't like. I had done a bit of research on most of the teams, not including the Panthers or Coyotes, because, well, they just seemed a little pointless. I apologize if I offended any of the 72 fans who go to their games. I love this, by the way. By lurking on Reddit and on Twitter to follow fan threads. That was a parenthesis, so it's kind of hard to read this. The two teams I immediately could not stand were the Bruins and Leafs. In particular, the Leafs. Fucking hate those guys. Thank you, Eddie. They just seem so arrogant and cringy, the way they seem to stalk fans of other teams online and berate them needlessly. I can respect Boston as a professional rivalry. Leafs can just piss off. I would genuinely compare the hatred between the Habs and Leafs to Newcastle and Sunderland. So that I don't know. He's saying that, Stuart, you'll know. So he's asking, this is part of his first question, is did Stu also factor in any hatred for other teams in his decision to follow the Habs? So, Stuart.
Do you know, I could have probably written Eddie's tweet myself. That was pretty much exactly my journey. I basically looked at the teams that I knew didn't stand a chance, and it was definitely Toronto, and it was definitely Boston. And it was because, again, as Eddie said, he kind of hit the nail on the head there. It was not the success that they've had, but the way that they've, put that in people's faces. I mean, obviously the Leafs haven't had success for many, many decades, so I don't know why they could say that really. But I know what Eddie means, and I definitely know what he means with the Newcastle Sunderland thing. And actually going back a little bit and kind of combining 2 points. When you were talking about the market in Montreal and how it's difficult to lure players in unless they want to be part of that kind of goldfish bowl. Newcastle United is like that in England. Newcastle United are the team that I used to support when we used to watch football, soccer, and they are part of a city where they are the only club in that city, and they are passionately loved, but they are scrutinised to the nth degree. And everybody wants success, and success has been a long time coming. And that big rivalry with Sunderland is very similar to the rivalry that we've got with the Maple Leafs, because Sunderland and Newcastle haven't won anything for a long time. Sunderland even longer than Newcastle. So we kind of have a rivalry where we're taking the mickey out of each other, but both of us aren't particularly good. Um, So yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I know what he means there, absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so I'll head into the next question here from Eddie. Once again, thank you. What is it about the Habs? Why choose them? There's definitely something special about the whole franchise. And the passion of the fans was the biggest reason for me choosing them. I was totally sucked in. Now I know you talked a little bit about that, but really, was it something that when you were doing your research you could feel?
Yeah, I mean, I knew first of all when I was looking at teams, like I said, I knew it wasn't going to be an American team, and I knew it wasn't going to be an American team because I wanted to follow a team who, to the fan base of that club, um, it wasn't a hobby. It wasn't something they did when there was nothing else to do. It was going to be a part of their lives. It was going to be a part of the fabric of who they were, who their community was. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it had to be an obsession to them, but I definitely think it had to be something that was really important, a significant part of their lives. And for me, there probably are some American teams where that happens, probably the Bruins, for example. But I just think for Canada, because the game originated there, and then the fact that other sports aren't as prevalent in Canada as hockey is, I definitely knew it had to be a Canadian team. And then, like I said, looking at the options that I had of which teams, Montreal are just a step further on that. It's part of your life sort of thing, and it's part of your identity, and it's part of, the fabric of that community. So it just stood to reason that they had to be the team.
I have one follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Mm.
Was there a close second?
Calgary
And it's
Flames.
we're not gonna hate you obviously if you say somebody, but I'm curious.
Probably the Flames. They were quite
Really?
close at one point.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. I like that. Guys, do you have the last one? Because the last simple question, I'm gonna let Eddie. The Eddie question be the last one that we can ask. But Justin, Alex, because I've been asking all the questions right now. So, do you have anything else?
Not really. I just want to say that it's really cool that it kind of stemmed from playing a video game that you that you chose to pursue your hockey watching career, let's call it.
Yeah, and the 04 one was so good. It was
Yeah.
so good. That
No,
he
Probably the
won that
best,
one,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
we're
good.
we're all huge Chell players. It's what we call
Yeah.
NHL games here.
Yeah.
But we play almost every year, and we're diehard fans of that. So
Yeah. If ever you're down, we can play with you, Stuart, and then
Sounds good.
we can talk again about the Montreal Canadiens.
You'll get yelled at by Maki. I
Yeah,
wouldn't do
yeah,
it.
no, it's brutal. It's brutal. Get back on D, you fuck.
Listen. If you're not playing defense, you're worthless to me. Okay, Justin. That's just the facts.
That's directed directly at me. But to go into another question I had, have you ever been to Canada?
No, and I think that was part of the allure as well. The place looks stunning, and it had to be a club. As weird as it sounds, it had to be a club where, that typical stereotypical Canadian forests and hills and rivers and valleys and everything was just on its doorstep. In Quebec, some of the pictures I've seen, wow. I would love to come. Love to come and visit.
Well, if ever you
first
do
of all-
come, we can definitely get a pint or something, and
Yeah,
for
sounds
sure.
good.
And
actually
another,
go to a Habs game.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, if you do come to Montreal, you definitely have to go to the Bell Center because it just puts
Absolutely.
the Habs fan base on a different level of passion and just engagement with the game. It's every time we go there. I don't know if I want to speak for these guys, but I get goosebumps just from like the sheer noise and the atmosphere there. So it's something that
I've
should
heard
be
it
on
described.
your list for sure.
I've heard it described many times as a cathedral.
Yeah,
It is.
for
It
sure. It's a
literally is.
religion.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. I think one of the lines in '04 was Montreal hockey's cathedral, like legit. That was part of the NHL
Yeah.
game commentaries. So, I just wanted to say that even when you talk about the Quebec woods, I don't know if you know, but in our woods you can maybe find a Montreal Canadian like Alexander Romanov, like we did. So that's the other benefit.
I
which
did
is
see
great.
that one, yeah.
All right, so very, very simply, and then we can maybe get into some of your questions, Stuart, just if you have some that maybe we
Yeah.
can't even answer. Who's your favorite Hab?
Ooh, right now, I've got to go for Anderson, I think. Just due to the sheer aggression he's brought to us. Obviously, I would prefer if he stayed out the box a little bit, but I don't know whether that would, kind of blunt that aggression and that tempo that he's actually got. I think that might actually rock that boat, and I wouldn't want to change the way he plays at the moment. So as long as he doesn't spend too much time in there, he can keep doing what he's doing.
I love it.
Great
and
choice.
any old ones?
Obviously, I was recommended, and I know everybody would pick this guy anyway, but I was recommended to watch The Rocket, the film The Rocket, and no wonder you guys have such a romance with Richard. I mean, what a player and what a story that is as well.
Yeah.
And I think he is the epitome of a Hab, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Huge. That's like the biggest underdog story of Quebec, and a lot of Quebecers actually feel like they're underdogs in Canada as a whole, and they really kind of felt Maurice Richard as like part of them. So
yeah.
I'm gonna let maybe Alex. I don't know if you have one last question, but if not, Stuart, we can get into your questions if you have any.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if I really have anything specific. No, I don't have anything specific to ask. Sorry about
Perfect.
that, Mackie.
Oh, no problem. It's tough, guys. When we're doing this remotely, sometimes we can't necessarily see if there's an intent to talk. So that's why we do this. So, Stuart, without further ado, is there anything on your side that you're curious from our perspective that we can maybe insight?
I think I was just curious. Obviously, the way that this season has panned out for me, it's been the first season for an NHL season that I've actually been there from the start of it. And obviously, I chose quite a strange season to watch. Obviously, everything's condensed. We're only playing Canadian teams, and I don't know. It struck me that watching the way that the league's kind of taken shape, or our division's taken shape at the moment. We've kind of got an expression in England with football, with soccer, and I don't know whether you've got something equivalent over here, but when two teams are really close to each other, as in points wise, the games turn into 6-pointers because basically you get 3 points for a win. So if you beat a team who's really close to you, not only are you taking those 3 points away from them, you're gaining 3 more points on them. And it's kind of like in our division at the moment, every game is a 4-pointer because you lose and you immediately have a gap to make up yet again on another team. So obviously you will know better than I because you've experienced the league when it was a normal league. Does it seem more tense? Does games seem as if they matter more in this one? Does it seem as if a loss is, a little bit more significant than it normally would have been?
I can answer that quickly. I felt like the actual intensity of games has not been like everyone talks about, like you said, like since they're 4-point games, we expected them to be kind of to feel like playoff games, like they're putting everything on the line. I haven't necessarily seen that in every game, but what I would say is that the demeanor of players when they do lose games, it feels like it's much harder on them because they know that these games mean so much more. So maybe the results of the games are a bit more felt, like you said, because they're 4-point games. But to me, like there hasn't been that kind of playoff intensity that I kind of expected from the games. But I do think that as far as closer to the end of the season we'll get those more intense games because when you're fighting for a playoff spot, it's gonna be intense in these games because they're all gonna be 4-point games.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that from. Sorry, go, Alex. I didn't know if you had something.
Nothing major, but yeah, I think like Justin said, the intensity might not be there. I expect it to pick up closer to the end of the season. We do have some weaker teams in the division, so maybe that plays into it. That maybe against Ottawa, Vancouver, for example, like it's not too big a deal if we lose to them because realistically, at the end of the year, they're not going to be above us. But I think what might be getting to players more this year is the fact that we're playing these Canadian teams in big media markets all year. That I feel like players are being more heavily criticized this year because a loss to Ottawa, then a loss to Toronto, then a loss to Calgary just comes across worse than losing to San Jose, LA, Anaheim, which we would do every year. Basically, every time we went on that Southwest trip, we would lose to those three teams, but that would blow over in a couple of days. Because I think if we start building up these losses to Toronto more often, Ottawa more often, that upsets the fans because it's local rivals. And the media comes and attacks the players more.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I was just going to say that, from my perspective, just like you said, Stuart, is that, I think, the Habs fans, they know that it's stacking, right? So we just lost to the Maple Leafs, and they have what is it now? Like a 10-point difference between us?
10
What is
points,
it?
yeah.
Something 10 points.
Yeah, it's
So
10,
we
yeah.
the Habs fans know that. The Leafs fans know that. So from my side of things is that you actually see more of a reflection of that in the communities because of how intense these matchups are now, because the importance of winning against those teams gives you that 4-point game like we just talked about. So I see it reflecting a lot more on that side, and like Justin said, I see it less reflecting right now on ice. But as the season progresses, I believe that's going to be different because the race to get into the playoffs, I believe, will get tighter and tighter, and that's with the condensed schedule is going to be something that's going to be very unique to this season. So we shall see. I don't know if you had any other questions, Stuart.
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, definitely. And thank you for those answers. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Well, again, I think the pleasure is all ours. This was, we didn't really know what to expect in terms of this segment. We knew that it was going to be interesting, but I'm even, like maybe you and your fandom with the Montreal Canadiens, even more surprised and pleasantly surprised to how great this was. This was really interesting, really awesome, and if you're up to it, I think we're going to have you back, Stuart, if you would kindly be on board with that.
That would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much.
Our European correspondent.
Yeah. And next time we'll have Eddie come on. Again, Eddie, a huge thank you for those great questions. And
not European anymore, right?
Oh.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I don't know if
don't
I'm
get me
allowed to go
started on
there.
that
But, yeah.
well, again, Stuart, thank you so much. Again,
I just have one more thing, because I noticed obviously your name is Habs Anglais on Twitter, and you have been saying that you're learning French. So I just wanted to ask you how it's going. How's your French?
C'est pas mal.
Okay.
Excellent, mon ami. Excellent, ça. Next time, we're actually going to do this segment all in French. So, Stuart, please study up and we'll do it. No, but Stuart, once again, really, this was awesome. It's going to be a long podcast for those listening because we had such an in-depth kind of two guests this way. We talked about Austin Matthews for 30 minutes, for Christ's sake. So, again, a huge thank you, Stuart. And this won't be the last, I hope, that we can talk and maybe follow up later on this season.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been awesome, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.
The pleasure's all ours. And we'll be right back right after this.